adjourn. Mr. Michael McCann.
Thank you very much, Madam Deputy Speaker. Can I first of all place on record, in the interest of transparency, that I am one of the Vice-Chairs of Labour Friends of Israel. But I am very pleased that we are having this important debate today. It presents a timely opportunity to discuss the nefarious role of Hezbollah in the Middle East and beyond, an organisation that is aggravating the current situation in Syria, an organisation that is creating instability in Lebanon, and an organisation that threatens not only Israel but nations across the globe. The heartbreaking news coming to us from Syria every day reminds us how complex and how fragile the situation all over the Middle East is. One large cloud lurking over all of these difficult situations is the presence of Hezbollah, and it's that presence which led me to seek this debate. Before I turn to the current political situation in Syria, Lebanon and the wider region, I would like to say a little about the true nature of Hezbollah and its structure and its objectives. Hezbollah is an organisation with a strong paramilitary force, independent of the Lebanese state. It was established in the early 1980s, and its fighters were organised and trained by a contingent of the Iranian Revolutionary Guards. Iran and Syria are its main sponsors, providing financial, political and military support to the organisation. The deputy leader of Hezbollah, Sheikh Naim Qasem, stated in April 2007, "All our policies, including firing missiles into Israeli territories, could not have been done without the consent of the leader of the Islamic Republic of Iran. He has to agree to all Hezbollah's activities in advance." Madam Deputy Speaker, Hezbollah is Iran's proxy and is used by Tehran to exert its sphere of influence over Lebanon and the wider region. It has also been used by Iran to help prop up the murderous regime of Bashar al-Assad in Syria through military means. The Hezbollah manifesto document produced in 1995, titled An Open Letter, the Hezbollah Programme, declares that the organisation operates under one command structure and shares the same goals. It states, "No one can imagine the importance of our military potential, as our military apparatus is not separate from our overall social fabric. Each of us is a fighting soldier." Madam Deputy Speaker, Hezbollah do not have separate streams for their military and non-military work. The Jihad Council, Political Council, their Executive Council and Judicial Council all report to the Shura Council, and there is again no operational or ideological distinction between those that pursue terror and those who do not. The Deputy Leader Sheikh Naim Qasem said of Hezbollah's structure, "Hezbollah has a single leadership. All political, social and jihad work is tied to the decisions of this leadership. The same leadership that directs the parliamentary and government work also leads jihad actions." Today, Hezbollah continues to maintain its military capacity in contravention of UN Security Council Resolutions 1559 and 1701, and in defiance of a UN military mission which was mandated to oversee the implementation of these resolutions. Hezbollah leaders themselves continue to maintain that not only are they rearming, but they are acquiring more sophisticated military technology. Madam Deputy Speaker, let me now focus on Syria and Lebanon. Historically, representations made in this place and beyond regarding Hezbollah have focused on the organisation's impact on the State of Israel, and I'll come back to talk about that in a moment. But first, I wanted to say a few words about the organisation's appalling activities in Syria and Lebanon. As a member of the International Development Select Committee, I have witnessed first-hand the awful effects of war on innocent civilians, and few more recent conflicts have been as brutal and as bloody as the current Syrian civil war, set off by the violent suppression by Bashar al-Assad of his own people. Iran and Iranian-backed Hezbollah are supporting President Assad's crackdown and are supplying military and intelligence assistance to the regime and shipping weapons to Syria that have been deployed in violence against their own civilian population. The elite Iranian Quds forces have provided extensive logistical support and advice on how to suppress protests following Iran's successful crackdown of pro-democracy protests in 2009. And the Free Syrian Army claims to have captured multiple Iranian and Hezbollah fighters. In many places, reports suggest that Hezbollah's military presence or military assistance is invaluable to President Assad in certain regions of the country. And it is, in my opinion, to the eternal credit of the State of Israel that they alone have sought to intervene in the crisis in Syria, and their intervention was purely intended to prevent weapon transfers designed to allow Hezbollah to increase its military threat throughout the region. Syria is a febrile place and activities there are fast-moving, but one thing that is clear is the destabilising influence of Hezbollah on the situation. Lebanon too has suffered at the hands of Hezbollah. Hezbollah triggered the collapse of the last Lebanese government in January 2011 after its ministers resigned over the then Prime Minister Saad Hariri's refusal to withdraw support from the UN-backed Special Tribunal for Lebanon. The tribunal is investigating the 2005 assassination of former Prime Minister Rafik Hariri, widely assumed to have been perpetrated by Hezbollah. The head of the Tribunal for Lebanon urged 4 Hezbollah members wanted in the case to appear before the court, and the tribunal's president, Judge Antonio Kassisi, made the appeal in an open letter 2 days after he was told by Lebanese authorities that none of the 4 men identified by the tribunal in June as suspects had been arrested. In March 2013, Madam Deputy Speaker, the Lebanese cabinet, which was dominated by Hezbollah, resigned after failing to agree on a commission to oversee elections. The Hezbollah members also objected to extending the mandate of the Lebanese Internal Security Chief, Ashraf Rifi. Their cynical destabilisation of the Lebanese political situation is intended purely to benefit their own interests, while prolonging uncertainty and fear of millions of innocent Lebanese citizens. And of course, the Iranian-backed Hezbollah remains a clear and present danger to the people of Israel. While Israel faces the prospect of a nuclear-armed Iran committed to the destruction of the Jewish state, the Iranian regime's clients lurk just over the border. And make no mistake about it, Hezbollah is committed to a continued war against the State of Israel. The leader of Hezbollah, Hassan Nasrallah, is on record as saying, "I am against any reconciliation with Israel. I do not even recognise the presence of a state that is called Israel. I consider its presence both unjust and unlawful. That is why if Lebanon concludes a peace agreement with Israel and brings that accord to the Parliament, our deputies will reject it. Hezbollah refuses any conciliation with Israel in principle." Madam Deputy Speaker, I have been to northern Israel and I have stared over our allies' northern border, acutely conscious of the 60,000 rockets that are pointed at Israeli civilians. Even by Middle East standards, Hezbollah is a particularly destabilising military actor. Israeli actions last weekend in Syria were intended purely to prevent Hezbollah from transporting even longer-range missiles supplied by Iran, thus putting Tel Aviv and Jerusalem under even greater threat. And it is in this context Israel's reported actions, in my opinion, are entirely understandable and, I would suggest, commendable. And this House should unequivocally condemn that Hezbollah threat and support the State of Israel. Now is the time, Madam Deputy Speaker, that the EU also took the threat from the Iranian-sponsored Hezbollah seriously. Speaking in Cyprus in September, the Foreign Secretary said that he wants to see the EU designate and sanction the military wing of Hezbollah. A month later, my right honourable friend, the Shadow Foreign Secretary, called for the EU to prescribe Hezbollah's military wing. I am very proud of the Labour Party's commitment to the prescription of Hezbollah, and I believe that the Government should use this cross-party consensus to push for firm EU action. The reason for the new impetus was the acceptance that Hezbollah is not merely a Lebanese militant and political organisation, but it is a growing international terror network working in tandem with Iran. But anyone in any doubt of the need for European action need only look at the number of international plots allegedly initiated by Hezbollah in recent months, one of which tragically succeeded when a bomb killed 5 Israeli tourists and their Bulgarian driver outside Bulgaria's Burgas airport in July last year. 2 weeks prior to this deadly attack, the Cypriot authorities arrested dual Swedish-Lebanese citizen Hossam Taleb Yaqub, a self-confessed Hezbollah member, for plotting to murder Israeli tourists in Cyprus. In court, the suspect said Hezbollah had spies around the world, monitoring locations that Jews and Israelis frequented in order to plan attacks. Madam Deputy Speaker, the title of this debate this afternoon is Hezbollah and Other Iranian-Supported Terrorist Organisations. And according to Matthew Levitt of the Washington Institute for Near East Policy, what we are seeing is the result of new heightened cooperation between Hezbollah and the Iranian Quds Force, itself under EU sanctions for its operatives' role in supporting Bashar Assad's violence against Syrian civilians. In addition to the bombing in Bulgaria and the foiled attack in Cyprus, there have been recent foiled attacks linked to Iran and Hezbollah in Bangkok, Baku, Tbilisi, Mombasa, as well as a bombing in New Delhi in India, which caused severe injury. Since the bombing in Bulgaria and the emergence of clear evidence of their role in Syria, there has been a greater pressure on the EU to list Hezbollah as a terrorist organisation, something a number of European countries are resisting. But why, Madam Deputy Speaker, is there resistance? Whilst the last government prescribed Hezbollah's military wing, Hezbollah's significant role in Lebanese politics is the often cited reason why the United Kingdom has not gone further and prescribed the whole of this organisation, which even its own leader says operates under one single command structure. The misplaced belief that Hezbollah's politicians are legitimate and independent from its deadly terrorism is also behind the EU's inaction. However, with Hezbollah politicians recently been responsible for collapsing the Lebanese government, a government they have long dominated through military pressure rather than votes, now is the time to expose its supposed role in supporting Lebanese stability for the fallacy that it is. Its evil role in perpetuating the brutal military crackdown by Bashar Assad against his own people, again as much a political as a military operation, further demonstrates that any attempts to draw some military political distinction are naive at best. I would therefore be grateful, Madam Deputy Speaker, if the Minister would update the House on the Government's view of prescribing the whole of Hezbollah, since recent developments in both Lebanon and Syria appear to have undermined the argument which has sought to separate out Hezbollah's military wing from its political operations. I would urge the Government to extend the UK's prescription of Hezbollah's military wing to the whole of the organisation, and I would also go further. With cracks beginning to show in French and German opposition to prescription, I would argue that now is the time for the Government to use this cross-party consensus and make the case for tough European Union action. And whilst I accept a full ban may be difficult to achieve, even an EU ban on the military wing of Hezbollah would send a powerful message that we do not tolerate Hezbollah's and Iran's terrorism, and we will work hard to curtail terrorist fundraising and recruitment across Europe. Madam Deputy Speaker, it is beyond doubt that Hezbollah does Iran's bidding in upholding the bloody regime of President Bashar al-Assad and perpetuates the misery of millions of Syrian civilians. They have sought to destabilise the politics and the social fabric of Lebanon for many years, most recently through undermining the government of the country through a joint political and military effort, and they retain and remain a clear and present military danger to millions of Israelis, men, women and children, with tens of thousands of missiles pointed at major population centres. Missiles which could be launched with one word from their venal anti-Semitic paymasters in Tehran. It is clear, Madam Deputy Speaker, that Hezbollah should be proscribed in its entirety by both the European Government and the European Union. And I would urge the Minister to take decisive action to show that this country stands against terrorism in all its forums. Thank you.
Minister.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. And can I begin by thanking the honourable gentleman, the member for East Kilbride, Strathaven and Lesmagow, for raising the important issue in the debate. Can I thank him for the clear and unequivocal support which he has given to the forces of stability in the region, the way in which he has pointed out the risks and the dangers that Hezbollah action poses in the area, for his support of the State of Israel. And can I also thank him for his courtesy in sending me a copy of his remarks, which has helped me to tailor these responses. I'd like to set out some comments for the record on the activities of Hezbollah and how the United Kingdom government sees this and other Iranian-supported terrorist organisations. The honourable gentleman set out at the beginning his view and his sense of the origins of Hezbollah and where it came from. Let me add my comments in relation to that. The United Kingdom government concurs that Hezbollah was born during the Lebanese civil war and in the aftermath of the Israeli invasion in 1982. And from the outset, resistance to Israel has been an important part of Hezbollah's raison d'etre. It seeks to represent Lebanon's Shia community and over time has gained significant electoral support. As a major political force and the largest non-state military force in the country, Hezbollah clearly plays an important role within Lebanon. But its actions have often been highly destabilising. 4 of its members have been indicted by the Special Tribunal for Lebanon for involvement in the killing of former Prime Minister Hariri in 2004, as the honourable gentleman made reference to. Hezbollah's provocative actions led to the 2006 conflict with Israel, which caused extensive damage and casualties within Lebanon. It has refused to disarm, despite the requirements of UN Security Council Resolution 1701, and has indeed continued to strengthen its arsenal with Iranian and Syrian assistance. But at other times, and this is the dilemma facing not only this government but other governments in the European Union, which the honourable gentleman was good enough to recognise, at other times Hezbollah has played a pragmatic political role within Lebanon. There may be all sorts of reasons for it, but has played a pragmatic role within Lebanon, including as a member of the current caretaker government, and in recent years has helped to ensure that the southern border with Israel has remained relatively quiet. As the honourable gentleman also noted, Hezbollah has a relationship with Iran that stretches back to the establishment of the movement. Iran has provided Hezbollah with money, arms and advice from the outset and continues to do so. Iran's supreme leader is also a source of religious authority for Hezbollah. In Syria and elsewhere, Hezbollah continues to work very closely with Iran and in ways which, the United Kingdom would argue, certainly do not represent Lebanese interests. However, it's difficult to say that Hezbollah is simply an Iranian proxy. Hezbollah's leaders do not act solely at Iran's behest and tend to factor in domestic considerations, including the impact on Lebanon and the Shia community when making decisions and sometimes when not making decisions. Regarding the issue of EU prescription of Hezbollah, which the honourable gentleman made a significant part of his remarks, my right honourable friend, the Foreign Secretary, has asserted yet again that this has become a topical issue in recent months with the announcement by the previous Bulgarian government on the 5th of February 2013 implicating Hezbollah's military wing in the atrocious bomb attack on a bus in Burgas last July, which killed 5 Israeli tourists and the Bulgarian bus driver. The assessment of Hezbollah's involvement, Hezbollah's military wing involvement, is shared by the United Kingdom. The guilty verdict in the trial of a Hezbollah operative in Cyprus, concluded on the 21st of March this year, is still further evidence of Hezbollah's role in terrorist attacks or planned attacks on EU soil over the past 12 months. In response, therefore, to the murderous terrorist attack at Burgas airport, and in light of the disrupted plot in Cyprus, we are calling for Europe to deliver a robust response. We firmly believe that an appropriate EU response would be to designate Hezbollah's military wing as a terrorist organisation. This would be in line with our national prescription of Hezbollah's military wing, to which the Honourable Gentleman made reference. The UK prescribed Hezbollah's external security organisation in 2001. In 2008, this prescription was extended to include the whole of Hezbollah's military apparatus, namely the Jihad Council and all the units reporting to it. That is the military wing. It's worth highlighting from the outset the distinction I'm making between Hezbollah's political and military wings. I'm referring to Hezbollah's military wing as a terrorist group and not Hezbollah as an organisation. It is a difficult distinction. The Honourable Gentleman set out his case very well. At present, the United Kingdom is still persuaded that the military and political wings of Hezbollah are organisationally distinct. It is important to recognise that Hezbollah's political wing is and will remain an important part of Lebanon's political scene, and this is a consensus which the EU shares. However, I do believe very firmly that EU designation of the Hezbollah military wing would send out a clear message, as the Honourable Gentleman stated, that we condemn the terrorist activities of the military wing of Hezbollah and that terrorist activities on European soil will not go unpunished. We believe the evidence gathered from the investigation into the Burgas attack and from the Cypriot trial into the foil attack by a Hezbollah operative to be sufficient to warrant designation action under the EU Common Position 931, the EU's designation process. We will continue to work closely with our European partners on this issue. Let me say a little bit more, because I think from the tone of the Honourable Gentleman's remarks and the sense behind it, he wants to be very clear of what we are doing and how determined we are to carry this through. We're going to take the lead in the EU on initiating CP 931 action in response to what we believe has been an attack on EU soil. A number of EU member states and the US, Canada and Israel have also called for the EU to take action. We're sharing information with our EU partners before calling for a meeting of Common Position 931 Working Group to discuss our proposal for a designation. We expect this meeting to take place in the coming weeks, within the next 4 weeks. The UK has compiled a core script to address any concerns raised by Member States ahead of the working group and to explain the implications for proceeding with the designation. One of the issues which is obvious, which might be raised, is the fear of some that the prescription might contribute to instability in Lebanon. I'm sure the Honourable Gentleman shares with me a view that we do not believe that EU designation of Hezbollah's military wing would run contrary to our shared support for Lebanon's stability. We see no reason why designation would in itself affect the EU's positive relationship with the present Lebanese government or the EU's assistance to the Lebanese government. So we do not assess that our designation of Hezbollah's military wing and the EU's designation of Hezbollah's military wing would affect the legitimate political role currently played by Hezbollah in Lebanon. In fact, we actually believe there's a greater risk in Europe doing nothing or not enough in response to Burgas and Cyprus. We're also deeply concerned, moving on to other elements which the Honourable Gentleman raised, by credible information that Iran and Hezbollah are providing military support to the Syrian government. Iran's assistance extends to providing technical advice, training, equipment and weapons to aid Assad's brutal repression of the Syrian people. Such support is unacceptable and in direct contravention to the UN embargo on the export of weapons by Iran from United Nations Security Council Resolution 1747. To counter Iranian support to the Syrian regime, we designated the Islamic Revolutionary Guards Corps Quds Force, part of the Iranian military supplying support to the Syrian regime, under EU Syria sanctions in August 2011. The UK has also designated 5 individuals under the Terrorist Asset Freezing Act 2010 in relation to the terrorist activities of Iran and the Quds Force. Hezbollah too is providing significant support to Assad through both direct military intervention and through assistance and advice to the Syrian forces. We condemn this involvement. as well as aiding Assad's brutal repression of the Syrian people. Such involvement violates and undermines Lebanon's policy of disassociation and so threatens the country's security. I was in Lebanon last week, I was in Beirut last week, and I urged all Lebanese parties to put Lebanon's interests first and stop sending their sons over the border to Syria to die, because the only sure and certainty that will result from that is that Syria's war will come over the border to Lebanon. And the policy of disassociation has worked so far, despite the fragility in Lebanon. It's essential that that continues. Turning to other Iranian-sponsored terrorist groups, we are seriously concerned by Iran's support for terrorist groups that undermine regional stability. Iran not only provides financial resources, military equipment and training to groups to Hezbollah, but also to other groups such as Palestinian Islamic Jihad and, to a lesser extent, Hamas. Such support undermines Iran's claim to support stability in the Middle East. We're also increasingly concerned by Iran's involvement in terrorism outside its borders through the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, Quds Force, including in Thailand, India, Georgia, Azerbaijan and Kenya, where 2 Iranian men were recently sentenced to life in prison by a Kenyan court for planning to carry out bombings in Nairobi and other cities last year. We're committed to the toughest possible international response to Iran's support for terrorism and its refusal to operate within the bounds of international law. Madam Deputy Speaker, let me confirm for clarity. We recognise the grave concerns regarding Hezbollah and Iranian-supported terrorist groups. We are taking what action we can accordingly. We do believe in particular, very much on the line set out by the Honourable Gentleman, that Europe can and must act. And I hope I've been able to persuade him that I and my ministerial colleagues will continue to engage with our European counterparts in pursuance of this objective. What the Middle East needs most desperately, Madam Speaker, now is peace and stability. It is difficult to see the part being played by Hezbollah's military wing in relation to this, nor Iran. The time for ending the cycle of violence perpetuated by Assad and his regime is now, and the time to bring peace and stability to the Middle East is now. And we will support all attempts that aim to do this, but we will be ruthless in our condemnation of those who seek to upset it.
The question is that this House do now adjourn. As many of that opinion say aye.
Aye.
Of the contrary, no. The ayes have it. The ayes have it. Order, order.